So,
yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 30 of the Anatomy Podcast, in which it is currently September 13th, 7:43 p.m. for me, Central Time. And I mean, to say the least, we got two different time zones going on here separately, other than myself. But tonight, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see in the bottom screen, we are joined once again by Alex Sevigny. But I want to detail that we are also being joined by the band that he plays live with, as well as just another fucking banger of a Canadian deathcore band. You know, just another band in that scene alongside the likes of Carcosa, Angel Maker, all that fun type of stuff. We have Planetkiller tonight. So immediately, welcome to episode 30. It's been an awesome journey thus far, getting 30 episodes out, which is crazy to think about. And for those of you who have been enjoying the podcast so far, please give me some feedback, because there hasn't really been any feedback.
Perfect voice for a podcast. I just gotta say.
I appreciate that. I try. It's definitely a part of the job too, the IRL job. Just like, hey, you know, we are calling you today for a lucky No, I'm kidding. I don't do that. I wish I did. That would be fun. But tonight on the Anatomy Podcast, like I said, we are being joined by Planetkiller, and this consists of Noah, Alex, Thor, and Josh. Okay, Josh.
Fucking Josh.
Just gotta check chat. There's so many names that we've had on this podcast. So many Johns, some Brians along the way. Plenty of Alex and Alex. You know, it's a whole fucking process. But for those of you who have been at least paying attention, at least been tuning into a couple episodes up to this point, you are more than familiar with our formula here on the Anatomy Podcast. The first half, which basically is going to be most of the podcast. So, you know, get nice and comfy, get some popcorn, crack open a cold one with the boys. Because, you know, we're kind of doing, there you go. Freaking Thor over here, bro. Let's go. I kind of wish I had my own drink. Damn. But, you know, just get nice and comfy, because with the first half, the first portion of the podcast, we get to know all the members in Planetkiller. We get to know everything that there is to know about them on an almost documentary level. We are here to tell their story. We're here to write it in history on the Sean Cross channel. And then with the second half of the podcast, the second portion, we will be looking to ask all of the juiciest, just like the absolutely pulping questions that you can ask for a band, that being, why'd you name it Planetkiller? Or, for example, you know, just what the other guys do outside of the band, but that they contribute to the scene, namely Noah. But with that in mind,
Alex too, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the people who have been listening to the podcast, we are more than aware of how many projects Alex is involved with, including what will be my own debuting later this year, which is super exciting to finally push forward and get that done.
Hell yes.
Yeah, as we get the podcast session started for episode 30, basically, gentlemen, the entire lineup, go ahead and give the audience a quick introduction of who you are, your name, and what you do in the band, and we will continue from there.
Let's start with you, Thor.
Okay, man. I'm Thor. I started Planetkiller with a couple other members probably 3-4 years ago. I'm just the vocalist.
Cool. Just the vocalist.
Yeah.
I'm Josh. I play the drums in Planetkiller.
Sick.
You can say more about yourself.
Alex.
Josh also plays guitar. He's really good at it.
Oh, sick. There you go. Multi-instrumentalist there. And then obviously we got Noah here, who is the bassist. And he does quite a few other things, including Screams Media. He is the bassist for Dragon Corpse, which, good God, what a fucking man to be in the room with. What a fucking band to mention. Oh my God.
So much, man.
It's all about the Dragusi.
Yeah, it's all about the Dragusi. I got it tattooed on me too.
You do.
Yeah, I got Dragon tattooed on me.
That's fucking legendary, bro. No, like no judgment here. That's respect. Nothing but respect here. So, as we kind of get more warmed up, we got Josh, Thor, Alex, and Noah here. And basically, if anything, Alex, if you want to just, kind of poke and prod at the audience that already knows about you, be like, this is who the fuck I am. Like, give us a pretty good summary of who you are, and how, you got into music. What maybe any details that you think you might have left out in previous episodes, and then we'll kind of continue from there.
There, I feel like by now, podcast listeners to the Anatomy podcast should know who I am at this point. But yeah, I'm a multi-instrumentalist producer working with bands like Planetkiller, Divine Destruction, Litterbox Massacre, lots of others. Always looking for new people to collaborate with and write music with. So yeah, as far as things I haven't mentioned before, I don't really know. I do like video games too. I probably never mentioned that before, but
yeah,
put that out there.
There you go, man. I mean, video games, are you into MMORPGs? Are you into FPS titles? Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, definitely FPS and RPG. Like, I love the Fallout games. I know, Sean, you and I have talked about them a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like Half-Life, Grand Theft Auto, all that good stuff.
Dark Souls.
Dark Souls, that one too.
Dark Souls, yeah. I still have yet to kind of dig into that genre and give it enough time. Like, I'm definitely a whore for Fallout. I've been a COD simp since about 2013, 2014, and it just hasn't stopped no matter how shitty the games get. And then the moment that Destiny dawned upon the gaming community, I have just been simping for that as well. I am a simp for shooters with pretty graphics, and sometimes that's all you need. But that's awesome. And absolutely, sometime in the near future, man, if you want to stream, if you want to jump into any of these titles, let's fucking do it, bro. I mean, I know you're hella fucking preoccupied with all of your incredible projects, including and not limited to Litterbox Massacre, Divine Destruction, Slaughter the False Prophet, fucking the White Bear Project. Like, the list goes on, man. There, even your own shit. You have your own solo project that you released for recently. For those of you who are not familiar, it's 5 p.m. morning, and it's actually pretty good. Gives me hella gutter love vibes. Just very, very casual acoustic stuff, and I mean, very just relaxed vibe. And sometimes when you're working on metal, I'm sure you need the balance, and that's kind of where this came in, I would imagine. And that's all you could ever ask for, is that you are able to witness and hear the variety in a multi-instrumentalist like Alex Sevigny. But as we go ahead and stop, just no, even though like I would do that all day if we could.
Yeah, get some of the rest of you guys here.
Exactly. So if anything, I'll go ahead and take the reins and have Noah introduce yourself. Basically, tell us what you do for Planetkiller, how you got into music, man, how you got into becoming a bassist and deciding, you know what, I think I have time for about 4 or 5 projects and a normal day job, all that shit. Like,
Noah's even crazier than me with that, to be honest.
Yeah, like seriously, tell us your story, man. Let's hear this.
Well, I got into bass because I grew up listening to like Black Sabbath and shit. So I was just like, yeah, I want to be like Geezer Butler. And then it kind of just like transformed from that. So I got my first bass when I was about like 10 years old. The first genre of music I actually started playing was jazz music. So I got into that, got into like, the funky kind of slap poppy kind of stuff. From there, got into metal. I was in my first band that was like a hardcore band in high school. And then I was in a band for a really long time called Possess the Asylum, did the whole tour thing and whatever. That band ended up breaking up right after we played with Suicide Silence. And then from there, I took about a 4-year hiatus from music. I didn't really want to do it. And then all of a sudden I got approached for a band called Wither Within. Did that for a little bit. Alex actually mixed our first single. That's how. Well, that's not how I met Alex. I met Alex through Letterbox Massacre.
Oh,
But so Alex mixed that band, and then from there, we were just talking one day, and he's like, "Hey, I need a bass player. Do you want to travel out to BC and play for us?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Why not, dude?"
no, why not?
So yeah, from there, it's just been like the past 2 years have just been kind of crazy for me. I went from like not really knowing anybody, and then now all of a sudden it's like every day I'm seems to be joining something new. I have a bunch of projects coming up, nothing that I can say yet, and then of course Dragon Corpse, which is like I don't even know what we are really. Just like a meme band that's deathcore power metal, and I'm
Power
having a
death.
lot of fun doing it. So
Yeah. Freaking power death power. That's like good God, Dragon Corpse is definitely a band that I want to have here on the podcast in the future. And by all means, I would love to have you return for that episode
sure.
once that fucking happens.
Yeah.
And speaking on behalf of that band, man, like fucking who would have thought that there would basically be what is it? Like I forgot the band. Dragon Force. Like I would not be surprised if that's kind of like where the name came from, except they're like, you know what? Dragon Force. Wait a minute. Dragon Corpse. And just like it's like fucking just fucking negative, bro.
The way that Chris looked at it, because Chris came up with the name, was he's like, what's the most popular power metal band right now? Okay, Dragon Force. What's the most popular death metal band ever? Cannibal Corpse. So he was just like, yeah, let's just call it Dragon Corpse. And it was like, okay, it's cringy. Let's go with it.
Let's go with it. That's funny. That's great.
And it went from there. We the first members were, well, Chris commented on one of Marty's videos and was just like, hey, like, do you want to make a band? And then, Marty's just like, yeah, maybe one day. And then he recruited me, made a band chat, and then we got Justin and Dalen, and
yeah,
I guess the rest is history there.
There you go. And by all means, we will definitely be preserving the fine details for the Dragon Corpse lore for that separate episode. But kind of like looking back on your background, just going from kind of more casual jazz and funk to death metal, and you said at the age of like 10 or something, you got into a hardcore project?
No, at 10 years old, I got my first bass. When I was in high school, I joined a hardcore project.
Right, high school.
And I was actually doing vocals for that.
Oh, lit. Okay, fun. Yeah, I can. It's kind of funny to imagine these days, though. People, there are artists like Harper out there in the scene who decided to plug Spirit Box when she went on American Idol, and she was only 10. So I'm like, oh yeah, shit, that makes absolute sense. Yeah. But okay, cool. Glad we're getting that corrected. Yeah, seriously, man, making moves in the scene for us. Just a little person too. Like, really proud of her though, and it's super cool to see those moves being made for modern counterculture. But as we kind of continue forward, plenty of background that Noah has been filling us in on so far. I think yeah, there we go. I'm saying that right now. Yeah, I mean, you said you originally you were working, you knew Alex through another project.
Yeah, Litterbox Massacre.
Right.
So I was like a huge fan of that. I was messaging Alex Ives, and then from there, messaged our beautiful Alex here.
Yes.
And then, just went on with that. And yeah, one day he came up to me and he's just like, hey, do you want to join Planetkiller? And I'm like, well, I'm a fan of that band too. So yeah. I'll fucking join that. No problem, dude. And now these guys are like some of my best friends now. So
yeah, that's the best thing ever. And like,
I love you too, man.
Absolutely, man. And if anything, I wanted to go ahead and real quickly pluck 5 different records and or artists off of you in general. From just like your entire freaking musical lineage, your lore. And let's go ahead and just pick off 5 different records or just 5 different artists, if it's harder to choose a specific album, that kind of helped you get to the point that you are now as a musician.
Okay. So the first one would definitely be Black Sabbath, Master of Reality. That's what actually really got me into music. Second would have to be Slipknot, self-titled. That's what
Okay.
got me into more of the extreme stuff. After that would probably be Suicide Silence, The Cleansing. And then Hortopsy, I forget what the name of the album is, but it's their first full-length album. And then after that is actually Cranium, just as a whole band, because that's what really, really got me into Slam, and I'm a huge Slam fan. So
there you go. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Noah, for providing us a little bit of insight into the musician that you are, and we will definitely be digging into your story more over time. As we move on, Thor, go ahead and introduce us a little bit more in depth to who you are. Obviously, you're the vocalist, and I can only assume the lyricist for Planetkiller. But basically, start from as early on as you're comfortable with, and basically give us a little recap on how you ended up becoming a musician and you ended up getting into the path that you are now currently on and going forward.
Yeah, for sure. Basically, I'm pretty relatively new to metal. I didn't really listen to a whole lot growing up. Like mostly started with like Alexis on Fire and Billy Talent and Rise Against, like obviously Guitar Hero was huge for like inspiring a lot of people to get kind of in that genre. And that kind of happened around like grade 7. Billy Talent, I got to see him. I got to meet him in our local venue here. It was awesome. I was so young, I didn't know what to do with it. So I was like, just couldn't say any words to him, except, hey, can you sign my shirt? So it's like,
sign my tits.
Yeah, exactly. From there, kind of moved on to when All Hope Is Gone released. And then I kind of just listened to that over and over. And my brother made fun of me for it. And like, he's a hip hop guy, but we're really, so it was more of just like jesting at me. So
yeah.
Got to a point where I started to listen to other bands because I worked at Best Buy with a close friend, Josh Reaver. He is in another band called Daemonian. And he's in Death Machine too. He's a vocalist. He is. And he got me into more heavy shit like Infinite Annihilator, Suicide Silence, all shit all over that venue or genre venue. Running out.
Right.
Venue brain. Yeah, and from there I kind of just like started practicing because he was kind of teaching me how easy it is, and I decided to YouTube it one day and just started practicing in my car every day to work for years on end. And it took probably like, I don't know, I've been practicing vocals for like 9 years now or something like that, but didn't start a band for the first 5 or so. So 5 or 6.
Yeah, damn.
Legit.
Yeah, pretty legit. And honestly, like a lot of people, even me, during the beginning of the whole like podcasting process and getting into this documentary stuff, and just like kind of recording the legacy of musicians, people enjoy the idea that from the very beginning, it's like almost trauma induced getting into certain musical genres and just investing, just like, oh, fucking hate everything. So I want to get into metal. But sometimes, man, sometimes it's just like, huh. And like, not even that, but even more specifically later in life is when you decide to jump into the art, decide to jump into the music. Yeah. And then you have another moment as you turn to the right and you start doing all these vocal tutorials. You start learning how to hone the craft. You're like, okay, this is pretty easy. You keep on going down that path and you kind of get to where you are, which is super cool. And sometimes, that's not something you hear every day, or at least something we haven't heard on this podcast for all the 29 episodes beforehand. Is just, kind of out of nowhere, just wanting to, and later in your life, again, just jumping into the craft. That's super unique. And I mean, obviously, you found a home with Planetkiller, and like that's as solid as it gets right now, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure.
So kind of continuing on from the point that you have provided us so far, which again, thank you, Thor, for providing us your story thus far. I wanted to learn, and I wanted to offer the audience the insight of like your experience in any projects beforehand, or is Planetkiller your first? Like, what are the deets on that, man?
Yeah, so that's pretty much it, man. Planetkiller was my first that actually ended up recording anything, that ended up playing anything live, anything really that you need to be an actual verified band, basically.
Yeah.
I was in a band with Josh a while ago, but it didn't really go anywhere. It was just kind of like us experimenting. I had never done any vocals before. I still hadn't really gone that far in practicing. There was a point where I was like practicing in my car, and I felt like I kind of hit a wall. And then I was on Twitch one day, and I seen Tyler Shelton was on there, and I was like, yo, I just discovered this band. Josh just showed me fucking Traitors. So I went on there, and he had some tutorials on how to hit the tunnel throats and go lower, and just he just hit all the right notes that he needed to give, and helped me progress quite a bit. And that's when we started to get into more Planetkiller shit, because I felt more comfortable in it. But even since then, it's only getting better. So
yeah, that's really what matters. And I mean, after all, being that you guys only got your debut full length out last year, you've had a little bit more time to hone the craft as a vocalist. And to be honest, I feel bad, because speaking for projects that I've interviewed Alex Sevigny for beforehand, Planetkiller is actually one of the only projects that I have not checked out much of the music for. I've heard a couple songs, but it's been way too long. So I need to refresh my impression upon Planetkiller, because you all seem to be very solid people. And I mean, obviously, you guys got a following. You got at least 1,000 plays on each of your tracks, 10,000 on one of them. So I'm like, okay, I hear you. I see the numbers. Let's bring it in. Like, first impression. But without a doubt, speaking on behalf of lyricism, what ended up getting you into lyrical writing?
I kind of always just did poetry, like whether I'd be on the notes in my phone or my iPod when I was in like middle school or something, like just getting the shit out of my head that I needed to. I feel like that's one of my only real like strong art, I guess like art venues that I can use to write what's actually going on in my head.
Yeah.
With Planetkiller, it was kind of like in the beginning, it was more of like I had unresolved mental issues, if you want to put it that way. I was just angry a lot, and I think I've grown quite a bit since then. And now it's just more of like I don't want us to have a gimmick. I don't want to be labeled. We're all like super fun, squishy guys. We're all teddy bears. Like,
yeah,
you ask us a question, we'll probably answer with a fucking joke. Like,
yeah,
that's just who we are. We don't want to be the serious guys staring at the camera and then on stage do the same thing to you, like, we're not assholes. We're not pretending to be somebody we're not. We're who we are.
Exactly. And that's really all that matters. Well, I mean, go ahead, Thor, and I definitely want to zoom through this. No pun intended, being that we're recording on Zoom. I totally forgot about that. But if anything, go ahead and provide the audience 5 albums, EPs, or artists in general that you would recommend that has helped you forge the path you are currently on with Planetkiller as their vocalist.
So of course, the Doom EP, Job for a Cowboy, and Entombment of a Machine, especially, just beautiful. What the hell? Like, where did that even come from? And probably The Cleansing, Suicide Silence. That whole album was wicked. Carnifex and Parkway Drive helped me hone my vocals a lot too. Yeah. What's that, 4?
Yeah, 4.
5th one, probably, I would honestly probably say Slipknot, just for getting me all the way in, I just had the tip in at first. And all of this song came out, and I was like, yo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, those are definitely different times. I absolutely agree. And it's crazy to think how much even just albums like The Cleansing and bands like Job for a Cowboy, which like I hear so often in the podcast, and it's like, holy shit, they are local to my state, and I've never actually listened to them. Like I've heard In Two Men of a Machine, and I've heard a cover by my homie Agung from Macluke back in episode 6, which is fucking crazy. He did a cover of that, and I'm like, what's this? What's all this hype about Job for a Cowboy though? I'm like, I've never heard of them, and I still have yet to listen to any of their EPs or albums through its entirety, which I will be doing soon. So everybody who's like, oh, you need to listen to Job for a Cowboy, I'm working on it. Okay, I promise. But as we continue to learn bits and pieces of Planetkiller's story so far, the anatomy of Planetkiller being all of its operators, you got the organs, the bones, the heartbeat, like the freaking veins that help the blood just pump through the body. We got Josh, the sticks, the chops, the guy who whacks shit, dude. He whacks shit for Planetkiller. He is the heartbeat guaranteed. Basically, Josh, go ahead and tell the audience and myself, because, you know, I am present. I do want to learn your story too. And we're not about fucking frontman syndrome here. So for only for a moment, fuck you, Thor. No, I'm kidding.
So just a little behind him on stage, just a little.
Yeah, exactly. But Josh, go ahead and provide us a little bit about yourself, storyline wise. Like, you know, this is your moment. Tell the audience what you want them to know, and what you don't want to know, just give them a bit of fuck off, and then we'll continue from there.
No, I got into music. I was in a really crappy pop punk band. I actually started playing bass when I was in that.
Right.
I had a Warwick bass that was heavier than I was at the time, just all the way down. And then our bandmates of that band kind of showed me some heavier stuff like Whitechapel and Parkway, and I was like, okay. Got into heavier stuff like that, a little bit of metalcore as the years went on. That was pretty much my backbone genre. I always listened to that. Now I'm a bit more open to a lot of other stuff too, but still, again, metalcore. I played guitar in a couple bands, drums and more than that. And yeah, moved out to BC, and I was looking to play drums or at least guitar or something for a band. I got with Planetkiller, and I have been loving it.
Great. And I mean, it's crazy to think that when it comes to Planetkiller, y'all have 2 multi-instrumentalists, which I have a very itching question about that we will ask in the second half of the podcast. By all means,
guitar too, worth noting.
One who doesn't play any instruments.
Right. I mean, hey, sometimes that kind of comes with the paper. You're like, dude, I'm just here to look pretty and to attract everybody up front. Oh, get the fuck up here. Like, you know, the front man, the hype man. It's just like that little equal bar. It's freaking. It's equivalent. It's congruent. Okay. It's okay. It's okay. You're okay, Thor. We forgive you. But go ahead and continue, Josh. And I don't know, man. Like, how did you end up like wanting to freaking slap on the bass or chug on the guitar and then end up getting into drums? Like, go ahead and let us know the fine, intricate path that ended up getting you into all those various instruments, but from the very beginning. Like, who told you, hey, pick up a fucking bass guitar? And you're like, okay, or whatever. You know, that's what we want to know, bro.
I actually started, I guess, the very first learning a guitar. My dad had got me on for my 12th birthday, maybe. Yeah. And I was awful, you know, as you are when you start. But that just kind of challenged me to learn faster, I guess, and kind of like write. I started making songs for friends' bands, like metalcore kind of stuff, from playing guitar as well. So I don't know. In terms of bass, though, getting into that band, they actually just needed a bass player. They had a guitar player who was for sure better than myself at the time. And we just kind of needed to fill that spot. So I was like, yeah, I mean, you got a bass, like I'll play. It'll be fun. It actually was like a ton of fun. Just like a really jokey kind of pop punk band. Just fun.
Yeah.
And after showing me the heavier stuff, I was like, yeah, okay. Got into high school. That's where I started playing guitar for a band out of Ontario, Dana Gray. very fun times. We've played with a lot of decent bands for sure as well. There's a place in London called Rum Runners, and it's one of my favorite venues to play for sure. And then drums, the guitar player of the punk band I was in at the beginning, we started like a side thing, and he was playing guitar again, but I would always just like go over early to practice and like kind of just hit on the drums and kind of see what I could do, what I could come up with. And I kind of got better and better at it. I would like practice like listening to songs and kind of play a video of myself and be like, okay, yeah, I need to work on that part. But again, that just challenged me to want to keep going.
Yeah.
And then in terms of drumming for a band, I haven't been able to find bands out here where I can play guitar. So drums it is. But no, it's been really fun. It's been really, really challenging. But that makes it even more fun as well. So
yeah. I mean, it definitely seems that for you, when it comes to the actual challenge, that's what's driving you, which is like very important, because most people, and this is just speaking in general, this is speaking on behalf of people that have been very close to me for years and years and years, which if you happen to listen to this is no disrespect for you or to you. I absolutely love you. There's a reason that you're still actively in my life. So just, a little disclaimer for all of the homies back home in Arizona and even presently with me. But, sometimes when you're faced with challenge in life, no matter who you are, for most people, I see it's intimidating instead of just like, ooh, a challenge. Like, not many people think that. So I commend you for utilizing the mechanic of a challenge to continue cranking the gears and to keep the machine flowing. It's not common among anybody, I don't think, to just actively be like, you know what? I like a challenge. That's usually something you see in the movies, not something you see in real life these days. These days, there's plenty of people who, when faced with a challenge, simple as that, they're intimidated. They're like, you know what? I think it's time to go. And I'm like, dude, you gotta stay. You gotta stay and forge the path. But absolutely, it's dope again to know that Planetkiller has 2 multi-instrumentalists, and like I can only imagine that causes like so many more gears to turn, and it makes it to where the machine, the anatomy that is Planetkiller, the vessel, the being that is Planetkiller, it just makes the bones and everything work together so much more. It's like nothing against it, not body shaming, but it's like a scraggly white dude like me compared to Dwayne The Rock or something. You got like a lot more muscles being engaged. You got a lot more areas just like boom, boom, like machine pop. And, you're able to throw punches better. Not that I'm endorsing violence, but playful violence. Exactly. But as we kind of continue, I guess, let's see what I think one thing to definitely pluck off of you to pick your brain about, if I may, is 5 different albums, 5 EPs, 5 singles, maybe songs that you can never become tired of, or 5 artists that helped you get onto the path that you are currently on, and made you say, you know what, just Superman post, I want to be the chops for Planetkiller. You may take it away.
All right. I listen to a lot now. So strictly in terms of help shape the music, first like heavy thing I ever heard was one of Whitechapel's earlier albums. Showed me a couple songs from that, and I was just like, yes, again, get into metal. My dad was
in Tennessee. Sorry.
Tennessee. Actually, I think there's another band I would say, and they're from that area if I recall. But that when I got into like listening to metalcore, Memphis Mayfire was a very sick band to listen to for me. Their album Challenger, very, very good. I loved that kind of music. I just started writing like crazy because of that album, I would say. What else? Structures, band out of Ontario.
Okay.
I don't think they've ever put out a bad album or a bad album. So any of theirs, favorites of mine for sure. And
Sorry, I didn't mean to pressure you.
So many. Well, you know what? No, one of ours is called Futility from Planetkiller, and that song is a challenge in itself, and I think that's why I like that one so much.
There you go. A man of challenge. I like it. And if anything, I did want to ask you concerning the journey you've taken to get here so far. You mentioned that beforehand you played in a pretty fun pop punk band. You've played in kind of metalcore bands before. Yep. So like if you had the opportunity, because you mentioned, yeah, I would love to be a guitarist, but it doesn't seem to be an opportunity. If there was an opportunity, like what other music would you be participating in, do you think, at this moment, if the opportunity was there?
If I was playing guitar, it'd be something like I don't know what the genre would be, but a band similar would probably be like Era.
Era,
like,
ooh.
Northlane and stuff like that.
Okay. So like really atmospheric metalcore.
Yes.
Sick.
Definitely.
Well, you know what, people? I hope a bunch of musicians are listening to this right now. Take the fucking opportunity. This dude's pretty awesome. And I haven't even heard Planetkiller. I just like the way this dude thinks. Give him another challenge, people. Give him the challenge. But with that in mind, that is actually a pretty good way to wrap up the first half of the podcast session. We, ladies and gentlemen, have learned quite a bit. At least like a freaking sample, and we'll learn more later in time about any of these guys, all at once, boom, bada bang. But as we move into the second half of the podcast, this is the music side of the podcast. This is like, where did you get the name, and all those type of questions that I'm sure you are yearning for. I know I sure as hell do with every band I interview on this podcast. But if anything, right off the bat, we kind of full circle and continue just to Alex here, because I wanted to ask you, compared to all of the other bands that we've hosted you on the podcast and promoted beforehand, like I know that with Planetkiller, this is one of the projects, if not like one of the only projects, if not the only project that you perform live with. So I was wondering, what is your different approach? How do you operate differently when it comes to Planetkiller as a multi-instrumentalist, as a sound engineer, as a musician, as an artist in general, man? Like, what makes Planetkiller differentiate from all these other projects that you've been just dotting back and forth, just like freaking 10 arms at once? I don't get it, man. But like, what's different with Planetkiller, man?
It's definitely hugely different when you write something and you're like, okay, I got to play this live later at some point. And that maybe comes down to writing differently, or if writing something challenging, which obviously is something I'm into as well, practicing a lot to make sure it's tight to be able to play it. So I guess I get a lot more immersed in the more tangible aspects of the music as opposed to just the writing and listening. Right. There's a lot of, like, obviously practicing, performing, you really like get into the music, and it's much more intimate even with your own songs in this way, because you like playing a song live, you experience it, and such a unique perspective as opposed to when I'm playing the engineer role and recording, writing, mixing and stuff. Yeah, like it certainly adds a whole new dimension to it. I feel like there was something else I had for it, but I lost my train of thought.
You're fine, man. You're fine. And the thing is, too, again, compared to all of your other projects, I am curious as well if, very similar to Chris White at a Body Snatcher, who we recently hosted on the podcast, really fun guy. Be sure to go check out that episode, people, because what a fucking story we learned from that guy. Just all of these iconic projects that he's been in, and obviously being that he's the owner of 1776 recordings, among other things. Like, Jesus Christ, that dude is on a roll constantly. And then when we got yeah, for real, with Alex here, it's like I have to wonder if you do like the sound engineering and all the fine tuning and mastering behind the scenes as well. Once you guys are like freaking sweaty and just like, okay, that was a good practice set. Fuck, now we got to record this. Like, is that kind of the process with Planetkiller?
For us, it's more like the sweating and performing comes after. So we kind of like sit down at the computer or we're in the studio and we throw ideas back and forth. And kind of like try to craft the songs together. And once we have a cohesive song, then we move it to the practicing where we'll rip through it, perfect it, get it all sweaty. And then I guess like the final mixing and mastering aspect would come somewhere after or in between that.
Right.
Fluid process, I would say. Like a lot of, maybe we'll write the song, get it 75% mixed, and then we'll go and sit down with the song months later and finalize and tweak and get it kind of where we're looking to get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know for sure me before this podcast session, I would have absolutely thought that just like any other band, even though you happen to, you got this whole fucking world outside of Planetkiller going on with what you do at Alex Sevigny Audio and just with all the projects you are involved with, including mine. So like, I guess even for me, I would think that it really is just the traditional, okay, we're going to practice it. If it feels good, then we'll kind of harness it. We'll put it on paper. Rough draft is the sweating. And then we do the final draft afterwards. Then we bring it live. But like, with this situation, it's a lot more like, oh, I quite do enjoy this song, Thor. Let's get it on paper. And then let's get sweaty. And then let's fucking master it. Genius. Like, it seems, like the way I see it though, a lot less sweat is involved. And sometimes we don't want to be dripping sweat. We love the sweat of live performance. We love the musk of being in an enclosed room with other people, but that doesn't mean we like being sweaty. Eventually you want to take a shower. You want to get nice and squeaky clean and just get the final product that is your art ready for the rest of the world. So, I mean, that's a really cool little detail to know about Planetkiller, I would argue, but that's just me. For the people who happen to listen to this, let me know what you think. But as we kind of move on and I kind of switch around the formula, which is really good for just keeping it fresh, I would say. I wanted to ask who came up with the name Planetkiller for this project? Would that be Thor?
Oh, kind of. I mean, like it wasn't as simple as coming up with a name because we kind of had we had a name that I wanted to use, or at least wanted to kind of put forward to the guys. It was the Unnameable because I really like H.P. Lovecraft short stories. He's got a story called The Unnameable. It's really, everything by him is really atmospheric and deep and kind of terrifying in that way. And I wanted to imbue that into music. And Planetkiller kind of just happened one day. I was at my girlfriend's house and I threw a empty Pepsi bottle in the garbage, and she just shouted Planetkiller at me. And then that's where it became that name. So I was like,
we do recycle for the yes, very pro recycle.
We're changed people now. Don't worry.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point to use at shows too. Like, say stupid shit like "don't recycle," and people laugh, and then it's like, sweet. That's great.
I like that. It definitely coincides with that kind of squishy vibe that you're wanting to invoke when it comes to your in-person impression. Because when you're like, we are Planetkiller from Toronto, people are like, oh my gosh, they're trying to be hard like Spite. And they're like, oh, actually, please recycle. And then, like, exactly. Very, very similar vibe. And that's like what's really important is when it comes to a scene that is becoming so much more intricate, so much more complicated as each day passes, because there's a new project, or for example, with very similar to Noah's situation or Alex's situation, they're like, I am participating in 15 different projects, hear me roar, like, that type of thing. Just like with the presence that they have in the community, it's very important that we make sure that, for one, it doesn't become psychologically complicated, I think. Like, you know, why the fuck does this guy have so many projects? Or why is this guy in a project called Methwich? Oh, and that's just like referencing Cameron McBride. But just like all of the language and the way that we market our stuff is very important. Making sure that we're not too serious, which is basically the whole fucking back of the book summary, as far as I'm concerned, for like black metal and the history of black metal. Just we were putting churches down for fun, and they did documentaries on it and shit. Like it's important to allow people to feel safe with music, even though it's heavy, even though the name came from, you know, it wasn't recycling, brah. Like it's very important to recognize like that, you know, we're good people. We're good people. We, if anything, we just don't like religion or something like that. At least that's a thing for me. Definitely. That's definitely a thing for me. But yeah, no, that's sick. And a tiny part of my brain, it's funny that the result ended up being so close. I'm like, Planetkiller, are they talking about like pollution? Recycling? Like what? I'm onto something here, I promise. And then, you know, Thor is just like, oh yeah. My wife is like, you're a Planetkiller. So that works out pretty well, I would think. So yeah, no, that's awesome. And if anything, we've had little tidbits over the session of basically all the collective lineup of Planetkiller telling us a story of how they got involved with the project and how they started the project. They're like, oh, no recycling. Okay, there we got the name. And, you know, they started practicing. Noah was like traveling out to meet these guys, and just everything kind of came together the way it was. This is the path that we've been talking about the whole time, people. And now we see all these other paths converging in just one line, straightforward. So I wanted to ask, and I was very, very curious on what ended up being most important with writing what is now the Treachery EP and the Fraudulent album. Like, just not even like digging too deep into it, because we will take some time at a different time, if you want, Thor, to go ahead and dig into this, tell the stories of both the EP and your first full length. But I wanted to know, like, what was most important when it came to writing. What is your discography so far? Like, anybody can add in feedback for this, really, because it's all of your story collectively.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
this band project, you know what I mean?
Basically, it comes from like where we started was an idea of going from bringing hell to earth. So like with the theme of me loving the H.P. Lovecraft like imagery that I get, because I'm really good at just imagining shit. I daydream all the time. But basically just came from like wanting to bring hell to earth, and I thought of Dante's Inferno, and it was like all the circles of hell, and we're going to go all the way up top. So we start with Treachery, which is the ninth circle, and go up from there. So we just did Futility, Fraudulent. Sorry, my bad. I'm throwing the shit around here. Yeah, and Fraudulent is circle 8. Next we come up on Violence.
That's actually really cool. I like that. So basically the discography is ascending from the very bottom of the 7 circles then.
Yeah, you're right.
That's cool. That's really, I like that. That is a very fine detail. And I think now I have to listen to this, everything. Shit. Because that's actually really cool. And I mean, shit, that basically sets you up for at least like, okay, so you got 2 releases so far. Are you planning on doing 1 EP or album for every circle that we're jumping up?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, while also minorly kind of like, I mean, like as we're all getting better at doing what we do all the time, kind of going heavier or in like not necessarily a different direction, but in a more modified or evolved direction.
More like dialed in.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Harnessing your craft.
Like vocal styles in our new stuff, and from Treachery to Fraudulent, the change in vocal style was just like night and day almost, because I hadn't hit the point where I really grasped it all yet. So And then also these guys with their drum patterns and fucking the solo bass lick, and then Alex is the time it shows everyone's just always bowing down to the god of podcasts here.
Hey, you know what? I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And just to say the least, it's funny because among other things, you know, we're learning about your discography. We're learning about your story so far, and like the story that we have yet to kind of like wrap up and just freaking harness and leather. I don't even know what it's called. Hardback. Yeah, I think it's called hardback. Just the binding, the leather binding for this massive book, this massive story that you're writing based off of the Divine Comedy, which is so fucking crazy to think about. I'm so excited to hear the rest of this. And I did want to say, kind of looking back on my very first impression when I first listened to you guys, this was before I knew Alex Sevigny, this was before I had a YouTube channel. I remember specifically thinking that you, Thor, were two different people because of the different variations in heavy vocal spectrum. I'm like, oh, it's another Angel Maker. They have two different vocalists. Boy, was I fucking wrong, bro. And now that I'm having to dive back into the discography with time, I am so excited to hear what you guys have written so far and what you have condensed into really what just sounds like two people. But as we kind of continue and wrap up what is episode 30 of the Anatomy Podcast, Thor, I had a question for you, sir. Would you want to dig under the skin of either Treachery or Fraudulent tonight? That way the audience has a little bit of kind of like track by track lyrical analysis, food for thought. And maybe if not that, what can you guys collectively offer us on what is going to be happening for Planetkiller here in the near future as far as material? What is the next step? That's a two-part question. Sorry.
For sure.
I'll take the first part of that question.
Yeah, probably Treachery is something we could, I guess, dig a little bit more into accurately, because or not Treachery, sorry, Fraudulent. Because Treachery was more of like our start off. I like drugs sometimes, and I make songs when I'm on drugs, and yeah, so it's kind of a little bit scatterbrained, but Fraudulent was a lot more put together, and I feel like we could definitely answer more questions of that.
Sweet. Okay. So in that case, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm sure it's later for you guys. I'm sure you have other plans to attend to this evening. If not, you're just like, dude, I just want to be done with the podcast. I love this guy, but I'm kind of done for the night. Like, I would completely understand. But by all means, as we dive into another Under the Skin session, we check out Fraudulent, which is their most recent full-length record, released as of last year. This is a 7-track LP, and it has 2 different tracks with features on it, one being with Larry Harper, and I think it's freaking ... So I can't see it, but I'm pretty sure Bryce is on there.
Yeah, Bryce Shuttlebauer.
There we go. Shout out to the boy, Bryce. And then we got Quinn McGraw. It's not showing me the full name. Okay, it is McGraw. Sick. And I'm not aware of what project that he is involved in, to say the least, and I feel bad. What project is he in?
He's in a band called Living Machines.
Machines.
It's funny, Thor and I are actually both wearing merch from that band.
Oh shit!
I've got a much older.
Oh, booty.
Booty shot. He's a multi-instrumentalist and vocalist, so he's like me,
shit.
Plus can do vocals. So.
Oh shit! Yeah, definitely. Shout out to him, man. That's incredible. We definitely
got like the prettiest person you've ever seen in your entire life, too. Like,
so this guy's just the perfect freaking musical incarnate.
Yeah, you betcha, man.
Okay, yeah. Well, we will definitely host him on the podcast. Eventually, I'm coming for you, Quinn. I'm coming for you, buddy. As we begin the Under the Skin session for the Fraudulent album, which I love the album cover, and it's going to be the background for the thumbnail on both the Anchor, Spotify podcast upload, as well as the YouTube upload, because I just love putting cool shit in the back. And I mean, you got a Baphomet like sitting on top of a skull and what looks like a 8-eyed dog thing, and there are tentacles everywhere. So obviously there's some very, very slammy, Sammy friendly shit going on here, or at least visually speaking. But as we kind of dive into the album itself, what would be a good back of the book summary for Fraudulent?
Alex.
Oh, why are you looking at me, man? They're your lyrics. I mean, being like the next level up in hell, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah, pretty much. Just getting more visceral. So the back of the book summary is something like, as you ascend through the levels of hell, your next step is fraudulent, where you find yourself amongst a group of basically pretenders, and a lot of it is to do with
Like
fake people and people who pretend to be something they're not, you know. Ego and all that shit is kind of involved in that, because we just find that happens quite often, and we wanted to make kind of light of that.
And there's like a subtext of like the human race and how we're like fucking up the earth.
Yeah.
There's definitely an aspect of that in there too.
Exactly.
That's important, yeah. And if like Fraudulence, man, if anything, there's a reason other intelligent life isn't publicly involved with the human population, and that's conspiracy shit for sure. But
Just
you know,
generous, man.
yeah, we're way too generous.
Yeah.
But if anything, as we dive into track 1 of Fraudulent, Commit to Carnage, what do we got going on here lyrically, Mr. Thor?
Lyrically, it's just about like killing shit, getting violent, getting real angry at the whole thing. It just starts it off with like a vibe, I guess, to start the whole album off the right way.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sick. And track 2, we have The Morbid Blight. What is going on here lyrically?
It was mostly title driven, so like the morbid blight, like the of humanity, is basically like it's the deadly, just complete and utter, just they've lost it. Like, humanity's lost it. So
Like really fucked up the earth.
yeah, we're kind of irredeemable at this point, and it's just like the morbid blight of humanity. Humanity's this deadly shit that it's like a virus to the earth, you know?
Right. Yeah, and I can definitely agree with that. Freaking like 1 out of 5 on Yelp for the whole human race, guaranteed.
Yeah.
Track 3, we have Become None. What do we got going on here?
Become None is kind of like fuck off, you know? It's like, get out of here. Piss up a tree, fly a kite, you know? Become nothing. Get out of my face.
That's crazy. That I'm gonna start saying that from now on. Just become none. Like that's great. I love that. 4, we have Hatred. What do we got going on here?
It's a song about love. Just kidding, man.
Irony.
Where am I? The song's basically just like a whole summary of the first few tracks. It expresses hatred.
Yeah, that's pretty simple.
Yeah,
I think this one more digs into that fraudulent vibe too, about like shitty fake people too.
Yeah,
Just really expressing hatred for those people.
Pretty self-explanatory. I think that's good marketing for you squishy fellow. But track 5, we have Machine Gods featuring Quinn McGraw, which what a name.
Ryan Carding is also in that song. Not Carding, sorry.
Also from Living Machines.
Yeah, Ryan Carding is also the vocalist of Living Machines.
Oh, sick.
Basically, that song was, I really wanted to make a homie track. They all live in Kelowna here with us. it was really easy to get them over one day. We just had kind of like a sesh where I had pre-written lyrics and we went through the whole thing. So it was more of I just wanted a homie track, and it wasn't exactly Living Machines and Planetkiller, and I'm Thor, so Machine Gods.
The name wasn't inspired.
Oh,
it wasn't inspired really by that. It was more of
I saw someone use the phrase machine gods on Reddit, actually referring to kind of like the whole architecture of like social media and the power and all of that. And I was like, wow, like we really worship these like machine gods in this society. And
control
it's kind of
life.
like, yeah, exactly. Yes, we wanted to dive into that.
Yeah.
And
that's actually really cool. And that definitely ties back to the fraudulence of it, because people have like all these false idols now that they just like worship on a whim. And it's just like, it's kind of easy to have gods and deities. Like OnlyFans, nothing against sex workers by any means, but like OnlyFans is, I think, another really good example, because people are like, oh, back in the day, the Greeks had Aphrodite. Now we have so-and-so, just like, $5 for you, just like, woo. And, that's just a whole thing. That's a whole mechanic. So like it, not that it's, again, not that there's anything wrong with that at all, because I'm pretty guilty of it too.
all do engage in so much social media, and it's just at the end of the day, like, we just have to be, I guess, careful about how much we let it into our lives, I think.
Yeah,
exactly. That's really important.
Real about it. That's where the fraudulence comes in.
Exactly. Yeah. You gotta have that sense of control and awareness of your environment. Otherwise the fraudulence just kind of seeps into your pores. Track 6, we got Futility, which Josh was like, I really like this track. So I'm now super curious on what's going on here lyrically. Take it away, Thor.
Lyrically, it's just like, we're coming for you. You're fucked. It's resistance is futile. I grew up watching Star Trek with my dad all the time, and I always had that kind of, I don't know why, but resistance is futile from the Borg in my head always. It's just one of those echoes from childhood, And I really liked it, and I thought it was a good title, so kind of just went with it.
I can definitely tell that Josh was like, yeah, people have been challenging me, but now I'm the challenger, motherfucker. Like I'm coming to bring in the wrath. Futility, baby. But to wrap up the Under the Skin session then for Fraudulent, which is the most recent full-length offering from this amazing band that we've had on the podcast for what is now episode 30. To say the least, thank you guys for deciding to jump on. We got track 7, 3 Tongues featuring Larry Harper, which we still need to get you on the podcast, boy. And then also Bryce from Divine Destruction, who always has been a really cool guy. What do we got going on here lyrically to wrap up Fraudulent?
So 3 Tongues, it's basically about a 3-tongued serpent, or like space. I had like a vision of a space,
like a Cthulhu type.
Yeah, kind of just like a eldritch kind of evil that really just consumed planets as it goes along, and that's where it brings up from hell. Yeah, and then the boys, Larry and Bryce, both had sick vocals. I had just gotten to know them probably a couple months previous to that, so I just wanted to see what they could put into it lyrically as well, and kind of everything just like slid into place on that one. It was really nice.
Sick. Yeah, and that sense of brotherhood and camaraderie that allowed you to wrap up the full length the way it did. Like, that's always important. And I mean, fuck, I know that I plan to do that with almost every single major release that I do, on this very similar level to like Victims from Chicago. Shout out to them. But all the features that they have on their records, and their records are still standing high and mighty in the scene, but on a very humble level that they are, like fucking pedestals, baby. We over here at Sean Cross, we love Victims and their whole discography, and we wish Meredith the best of luck with her current recovery, because she's been fighting fucking tooth and nail. Yeah, that's a great way to wrap up the Under the Skin session for Fraudulent. And as we prepare, I know you guys are like, okay, it's been quite a bit now. So as we prepare to wrap up completely episode 30 of the Anatomy podcast, what do you boys want to say to the audience concerning future Planetkiller? Obviously, every music right after their album, they're like, okay, do you like it? Cool, time to make new shit. And you just like kind of walk away, exit the room. That type of vibe. It's eternal. It's eternal. You got to move with the music machine. So I get it. So what do we got going on in the future for like the next year or so for Planetkiller? Should your audience, should your listeners be expecting anything? No pressure.
You should walk the listeners through what we got going on in October in Ontario.
So
there we go.
In October, we have a little tour coming here in Ontario. These boys are in Kelowna, BC. Them's motherfuckers flying out to here. We're playing a tour starting on the 22nd of October, ending on the 23rd. So Newmarket, Ontario, Montreal, Quebec, and then Oshawa, Ontario. We're playing with Pillars of Autumn, Beguiler, and Cruel Intent. So come out if you're around.
Yeah. And we're also in the process of course, ascending to the next level of hell, which is Violence.
Yes.
Which, so we've started writing some material for that, laying down some stuff, and we're really excited to start sharing, and writing more of it first before we share, of course.
Yeah. But
we're to be embarking on that next part of our journey.
Sick. Well, that being said, folks, it is currently 8:49 p.m. Central Time, but it's probably hella later for the boys in Planetkiller, whether they be in Alex Sevigny's part of town, being that it's his camera, or even Noah's side of town. I have taken more than enough of you guys' time, and it is getting nice and sticky over here in Tennessee, which I'm not vibing with right now because I have the fucking window open. Good job, me. But this has been episode 30 of the Anatomy Podcast. For those of you who have been following the podcast on Anchor, who have gotten us now to 27 followers out of 50, which is our current minimal criteria to meet to start enjoying the tiny endorsement from Anchor for being like a brand ambassador. That's a fucking opportunity now, which is crazy to think about. I might be making money off of this podcast before I make money off of YouTube. What the fuck? Like, but for those of you who have been following, who have decided to take the time to fucking make an account, follow us on Anchor, follow us on Spotify, listen, check out all of our YouTube uploads, really from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Because last May, I mean, shit, it started with like a couple humble bands, the homies in Warm Shepherd, the Stingy and Complex, and then To the Grave. And half of these bands really I did not expect to have on the podcast at all. And to see the feedback, to see the very steady growth of the audience that seems to enjoy what we do here on the Anatomy Podcast. Thank you. And being that it is episode 30, gentlemen, I do appreciate you guys hopping on. I do appreciate you guys providing me the time that you have. And I mean, you guys got a tour coming up. You got the Violence cycle, per se, that you are cooking up behind the scenes, which is, I cannot wait. And I got some listening to do for sure. I got some homework to do. Is there anything else that any of you guys want to plug? I mean, Noah, you got shit out the wazoo, bro. Like, it's okay.
Well, if people are paying attention to the Dragon Corps Facebook or Instagram, all I have to say is yes.
Yeah.
Something is coming. And then also I do my little stream with Screams Media. If anybody wants to check it out, I do it every Tuesday, 6 p.m. EST, and every Sunday, well, technically Monday at 12 a.m.
Okay.
We just have a nice time. Check out local bands. I get Rick rolled all the time, so it's great.
It's at least been once a stream.
It once true. I didn't get Rick rolled tonight. I'm very surprised.
I mean, that's a goal, man. That's a goal. Shout out to Bryce, man. Absolutely. Well, I do appreciate you gentlemen stopping by, telling us your story, and adding just another band, chick off of the massive just lineup of various bands in Canada, in the fucking US, now in Australia, Germany, like so many bands. Thank you to everybody who has decided to hop on the podcast and give me the fucking benefit of the doubt, give me the light of day. And obviously, more personally to this episode, thank you guys for telling your story, being on here, and providing me the opportunity to promote your content the best I can with only 440 subs and, you know, no Zoom that I pay monthly. Like, hopefully in the future, man, hopefully in the future, this podcast will evolve from documentary to like actual in-person, like hanging out with you guys in person. It's like that type of shit. That's what I yearn for, man. That's the shit that I want to do someday. But thank you guys again for jumping on, and you, everybody else, be sure to enjoy your night and stay tuned for episode 31 and fucking beyond, baby.